It's the 2nd of May 1962 and Hungarian coach Béla Guttmann has just led his Benfica side to a momentous victory over Real Madrid in the European Cup final, winning the trophy for a second consecutive year. High on the fumes of victory, he returns to Lisbon with the team and heads straight for the board of directors, looking for a pay rise. And after delivering 2 league titles, 2 European Cups and a domestic cup for Benfica, who can blame him? But the board of directors disagrees and turns him down. As far as they see it, they've built a super team, the best team in Europe, and they've won the European Cup in back-to-back years. They don't need Béla Guttmann anymore. And so, not one to stick around if he feels disrespected, Béla Guttmann decides to leave Benfica. But before leaving, he turns to the board of directors and declares, "Not in 100 years from now will Benfica ever be European champions again." Of course, at the time, no one took him seriously. They had the best team in Europe, they just won the European Cup in back-to-back years, beating Barcelona and Real Madrid to do so. There's no chance that this could be true. But since that statement, Benfica have made it to 8 European finals, and they've lost every single one. Even Béla Guttmann's star player from that 1962 victory, Eusebio, tried to lift the curse by praying at Guttmann's graveside ahead of the 1990 European Cup final, to no avail. But Benfica aren't the only team to have found themselves on the wrong side of a footballing curse, and while some have managed to break the curse that's been set on them, there are others still who rue the day they crossed the wrong person. Superstition has long played a part in organised sports, between both the players on the pitch and the fans on the sidelines. And this has led to a number of club curses being claimed by fans, usually when their team has underperformed for an extended period of time. And now, while many of us here in Europe are familiar with Béla Guttmann's curse on Benfica, there is another bizarre curse originating from Argentina that you might not have heard of. This curse involves Argentina's Racing Club, 7 black cats, and sporting heartbreak. And while there are many different variations of this story depending on who you hear it from, the gist of the curse goes as follows. At the beginning of the 20th century, Racing Club were one of the most dominant sides in Argentinian football. To understand how dominant they were, Racing Club won the league title a record 7 consecutive times between 1913 and 1919, doing so undefeated on 5 of those occasions. And they would continue to win various titles over the coming decades, but their major victory would come in 1967, when they became the first Argentinian side to lift the Intercontinental Cup by defeating European Cup holders Celtic. And while this was a momentous occasion for Argentinian football, it wasn't celebrated by all. Fans of Racing Club's local rivals Independiente in particular seethed with rage. This victory stung all the more due to their own failures in the Intercontinental Cup in both 1965 and 1966, losing both times to Italian side Inter Milan. For some, Racing Club successes were all too much, and this is where a group of Independiente fans decided to take things into their own hands. Apparently, encouraged by a local witch, they headed down to Racing Club Stadium, where the security guard, who was also an Independiente fan, let them in without issue. Once inside, they headed down to one of the goals, and beneath it they buried 6 black cats in order to jinx Racing Club. They then took the final black cat and headed to a random location in the stadium as suggested by the security guard and buried it there. Now, for the less superstitious of you, this might seem like a group of fans going to almost comical lengths to harm a rival. But as the story goes, it began to work with immediate effect. The last game of the 1967 season saw Independiente beat Racing 4-0 to win the Primera Division title, and this wouldn't be the only title that the curse would cost Racing Club. By 1980, Racing were still without a title, and rivals Independiente were thriving. It was at this stage that new Racing Club coach Juan Carlos Lorenzo decided enough was enough and called for the cats to be dug up. However, when they searched for the cats, they were only able to find the initial 6 buried under the goal, and knowing that there was a 7th cat out there, unable to find it, they allegedly buried 6 frogs in the place where they found the cats, as these are associated with cleansing and rebirth. But despite these countermeasures, things would continue to go poorly for Racing Club. They played their final game of the 1983 season away to Independiente, and not only did they lose the match 2-0, the result saw them relegated from the top flight for the first time in their history. There would be multiple failed attempts to dispel the curse over the coming years, and it wasn't until the year 2000 when Racing Club hired coach Reinaldo Mostaza Merlo that they would finally find some success. He was a coach with a good reputation for his footballing nous, but he was also a firm believer in Kabbalahs, superstitious rituals which are applied for good luck. The legend has it that Merlo insisted that the 7th cat be found, and so a desperate search began around Racing Club's grounds. Eventually, the final cat was located. It had been buried under the other goal in a section that was now covered with concrete, which they had to tear down and dig up. But finally, the last cat was removed and Racing Club's curse was lifted. Merlo then built a strong squad, and in December 2001, Racing Club once again lifted the Primavera Division title, ending 35 years of hurt. Of course, that is how the legend goes, but whether you believe it or not is really up to you. Title droughts are a natural occurrence in football as the momentum in the sport ebbs and flows, and for some, it's easier to accept a curse than it is mediocrity. It's not only teams that can be cursed, players too can bring on a curse. And the most popular of these player-based curses involves cup finals and touching the trophy before the game. As the superstition goes, if you touch a cup before you've won it, it will be the only time you touch the cup that day. And this holds true for all competitions, from domestic cup finals all the way up to the World Cup. And this can be a problem in finals, when during the workout players find themselves agonisingly close to the cup that they're competing for. And for some, the temptation proves too much. They can't resist just reaching a hand out and grazing that cup that they hope to win so badly. And lo and behold, by the end of the final, it's the opposition who'll be lifting the trophy. And there are numerous examples that lend this superstition credence. Famous examples include Gattuso touching the Champions League trophy ahead of the 2005 final, Dimitri Payet touching the Europa League trophy before the 2018 final, a match in which he went off injured early on. And even Ronaldo did it ahead of the Saudi Super Cup final, which they would go on to lose 4-1. Of course, with this example, it's also possible to find examples of players who've touched a trophy and gone on to win the final. Krychowiak did it before his Sevilla side beat Dnipro in the Europa League final in 2015. Fabio Santos did it before his Corinthians side carried out a shock victory over Chelsea in the Club World Cup in 2012. My question really is, what happens if a player from both sides touches the cup? So, these curses may not be all they're made out to be. For some, they're absolutely true and not to be trifled with. For others, they're just pure nonsense and not to be believed. But what do you think? Are there any football curses you believe in? And are there any other football curses you've heard of that I haven't mentioned here?